Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Epicomm, Mr. Andy Paparozzi.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be with you, and I thank EFI for including me in Connect 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't mind telling you that I find these State of the Industry presentations very challenging. In fact, I often find it hard to know even where to start because so much of such significance is happening in our industry. We could talk about everything from emerging technologies to recruiting and retaining critical skills, from diversification to consolidation. But I am convinced that what's most important for us to talk about and to understand and to embrace is four realities of our new industry. Reality number one is that despite all the negativity, despite all the talk about the decline in print and mail, despite all the talk about how much better things used to be, there's plenty of opportunity in our industry. We have historic opportunity to get involved in our clients' work earlier, stay involved longer, and satisfy a broader range of their communications needs. In fact, our challenge is not a lack of opportunity, it's deciding what is and isn't an opportunity for my company, given our specific resources, circumstances, and goals, because we can't chase everything. Reality number two is that a rising tide no longer lifts all boats. Our industry is growing again, and it will continue to grow in 2016. We'll talk about by how much in a few minutes. But what's important to understand is that we now either prepare for profitable growth or we get left behind. Back in the day, all we needed to know was that our industry was growing. Because back in the day, a rising tide did lift all boats, but not anymore. We now either prepare for profitable growth or we get left behind. Absolutely no one in our industry can count on rising with the tide anymore. Reality number three is what I call the Great Divide. It is that extraordinary variation in performance from company to company. Whether we measure profitability or whether we measure revenue growth, whether we measure during expansion or whether we measure during recession. Some companies far exceed industry results and others fall far short. And that's precisely why, as we'll talk about, industry and market and segment results say absolutely nothing about an individual company's performance and prospects. And it also raises the ultimate question, the million-dollar question, how do we get on and stay on the right side of the Great Divide? And finally, reality number four is that absolutely no one in our industry, no matter how well they've been doing, no matter how well established, can ever assume that they have it all figured out. And the reason I mention this, ladies and gentlemen, is that I'm beginning to hear something very troubling in Epicomm's State of the Industry research. I'm beginning to hear more and more of your peers say, Andy, whatever it is, would you get off our backs about it? We've got it all covered. And I heard that a lot prior to the Great Recession, before the Great Recession humbled us all. And I'm beginning to hear it again. Now, throughout this presentation, I am going to quote a number of experts from outside our industry, because I believe we can learn from outside experts who have had different experiences than we've had, who have different perspectives than we do. And one of these experts is General Stanley McChrystal, author of Team of Teams, New Rules for Engagement in a Complex World. Who's read Team of Teams? All right, if you haven't, please try to get to it. Nowhere in that book does General McChrystal mention our industry, but every word in that book is relevant to us. In Team of Teams, General McChrystal writes, "Feeling comfortable should not be our measure of success." Now, back in the day, when change was gradual and orderly, feeling comfortable could be our measure of success. But change is not gradual and orderly anymore. It is rapid, disruptive, and unpredictable. And when change is rapid and disruptive and unpredictable, nothing is more dangerous than assuming that we have it all figured out. So here's what I'd like to do in our brief time together, ladies and gentlemen. Let's begin with a quick look at our industry's performance and prospects, what's happening with sales and profitability, what concerns your peers most, and what's the outlook for 2016. Then I'd like to talk briefly about our industry leaders, or companies that, if you will, live on the right side of the Great Divide. They not only get there, they stay there. Now, after studying them for many, many, many years, we've learned at Epicomm that every leading company has its own story. But we've also learned that there are common or shared approaches and views and mindsets that help us, number one, prove that there is significant opportunity in our industry, and number two, help us begin to understand what's necessary to capture those opportunities. And finally, and this is where we'll spend most of our time, ladies and gentlemen, finally, I want to talk about what we at Epicomm call must-dos. These are not best practices. These are not things that would be nice to get to if we have the time. These are actions that we must take, not should take, not ought to take, not will take when we get a minute, actions we should, must take. Regardless of our company size, regardless of our segment, regardless of our niche, regardless of what we call ourselves. Must-dos. Essential to getting on and staying on the right side of the divide. I want to talk about the state of the industry, but I want to spend most of our time talking about how we make what's happening in our industry an opportunity rather than a threat, the must-dos. Our source will be the Epicomm State of the Industry series, which includes the 13th edition of our State of the Industry report published late last summer, and the fall update published early last month. If you are an Epicomm member, you should have received your complimentary copies of both reports. If you haven't, please let me know. All reports in the Epicomm State of the Industry series are generously sponsored by Canon. So thanks to Canon for making this important research possible. So where are we? Our industry's total sales, everything we do, increased somewhere between 1.5 and 1.8% last year. I won't have the final number for several more weeks. In one regard, that's disappointing, because going into 2015, it looked like our industry was finally ready to step up to consistent 2% plus annual growth. But on the other hand, in another regard, it's encouraging, because our industry has now grown for 4 consecutive years. And we haven't grown even modestly for 4 consecutive years in a long time. Sales, again, everything we do, now total $81.5 billion, still 17% below pre-recession levels, but up 6% from the 2011 low. Despite our gains, despite our recovery, despite our progress, profitability is still under significant pressure. Just 39.1% of the participants in Epicomm State of the Industry research report that their profitability increased last year. And as you'll notice from the table, ladies and gentlemen, where profitability did increase, it was almost always because of something the company did for itself, as opposed to something the industry or market did for it. We held the line on costs and increased revenues. We increased production efficiency. We captured higher margin work. We reduced overhead, labor costs, rework, and spoilage. In contrast, only small minorities attribute their increases in profitability to more favorable business conditions, to lessened price competition, or to the failure of competitors. What concerns your peers the most? Well, as it turns out, a whole bunch of things. They have a long, diverse list of concerns, led by worry about growing revenue, the rising cost of health care benefits, and the overall state of the economy and general business conditions. And notice, ladies and gentlemen, that it's not just what we know, it's also what we don't know. Uncertainty about where the industry, where the economy, where things in general are going. How is this all going to play out? Now, of course, we can never answer those questions with certainty, but as with change, there are different degrees of uncertainty. And we're at a heightened degree right now. The outlook for 2016, expect activity to pick up over the next 12 months. You can read about why in the State of the Industry report. With our industry's total sales growing somewhere between 2 and 3% this year. And that's positive, and it's encouraging, and it's another clear step in our recovery. But I think we can all agree that's not going to solve anyone's problems. Well, what else about the state of our industry? Well, everyone is getting into everyone else's business as the internet and digitization break down boundaries. Over 86% of the printing companies we survey offer variable data digital printing. But so do 95% of the companies that identify themselves as providers of mailing services. And so do 100% of the companies that identify themselves as providers of marketing services. Mailing services are offered by 92% of the printers and 95% of the provider of marketing services. Marketing services are offered by 2/3 of the printers and all of the mailers, and fulfillment services are offered by large majorities of all three groups. So what's the point? Well, the point is twofold, ladies and gentlemen. First, obviously, what a company calls itself doesn't tell us as much as it used to about what it actually does. And second, despite record consolidation, and I don't think you'll be surprised to learn that our industry has lost nearly 6,000 establishments since 2007, a 19% decline, and over 10,300 establishments since the year 2000, a 29% decline. Despite record ongoing consolidation, however, competition is intensifying, not easing, because we aren't simply competing with companies like our company anymore, as the internet and digitization break down boundaries and let everyone into everyone else's business. What else about the state of our industry? We're getting into a whole lot of new businesses ourselves. Here is a partial list of the services, a partial list, that participants in Epicomm State of the Industry research offer. We've got everything up there from mailing and marketing including social media marketing, content management and creation, database analytics, inbound content marketing, even the creation of entire marketing plans for our clients, all the way down to video for the web and 3D printing. Now, not long ago, this list would have been much shorter. Not long ago, many of the services on this list would not have been considered relevant to our industry, but they are now, and that's why I said earlier in reality number one, that our challenge is not a lack of opportunity, our challenge is deciding what up there is in fact an opportunity for my company given our unique resources, circumstances, and goals. What else about the state of our industry? Well, just as our services are being redefined, just as our competition is being redefined, our labor force is being redefined. I recently asked your peers which skills would be most important to their company's success over the next 2 to 3 years. And there is a long list, but here are the 4 most frequently cited by your peers critical skills: leadership, marketing, strategic planning, and production operation efficiency. Now, a few years ago, this list would not have looked like this. But we need new skills. Our labor force, like everything else that matters, is being redefined. Well, why did your peers pick or identify these 4 critical skills? Leadership. They said, Andy, I got to figure out where I'm taking this company. Where is this company going? How am I going to get it there? How am I going to build commitment among staff as I make major changes, not tweaks, not minor changes, but major changes to what we do and how we do it? And then, how am I going to execute the plan? I said, Andy, the reality is I am making tougher decisions over a much broader range of issues with a shrinking margin for error and with both the return to making the right decisions and the cost of making the wrong decisions greater than ever. Leadership. Which critical skill will be most important to your company's success? That's what finished on the top. Reflecting the nature of our new industry. Marketing. Again, here your peers were very clear. We're not talking about the mass, generic, here's what we do and who we are and how we do it campaigns that leave us looking like everyone else. We're talking about creating compelling, personalized, targeted campaigns that show our clients how they will benefit from doing business with us. And your peers were very clear. We've got to force ourselves to consider all marketing methods, including social media, in creating our campaigns, not just the methods with which we are most comfortable and most familiar. Strategic planning, your peers told me over and over, I've got to get all my marketing intelligence together in a plan that is actionable. Production and operations, your peers told me over and over that, yes, business is picking up. However, my margin for error is still dangerously thin. We cannot allow complacency to creep back in, which it has a way of doing. We must continue, even as recovery progresses, we must continue to streamline workflow, get faster, maximize efficiency, and contain costs as vigorously as we did at the depths of the Great Recession, or growth will never make it from the top line to the bottom line. That is the state of our industry. And then, of course, we come to the Great Divide, or that extraordinary variation in performance from company to company that we would miss if we focused on industry and market and segment aggregates alone. I said that our industry's total sales increased somewhere between 1.5% and 1.8% last year. But if you dig a little deeper, it isn't hard to find companies whose sales increased by double digits and companies whose sales decreased by double digits. Among participants in Epicomm research alone, 1/5 grew at least 11% last year. But then 1/5 saw their sales decline at least 7%. And the same thing with profitability. We have companies in our research who are running at 2% or less. We have companies in our research who are running at 20% or more. 37% of the participants in our research report pre-tax profitability rates of 4% or less. But then 32%, almost 33%, almost a third, report pre-tax profitability rates greater than 8%. That is the great divide that we would miss if we looked at industry and market and segment aggregates alone. And as I said, that raises the obvious question that is at the very essence of the state of our industry. What do I have to do to get on and stay on the right side of the great divide? And I emphasize stay on, ladies and gentlemen, because turnover is very high. For example, just 21.3% of the companies that were among the fastest growing participants in our research in 2013 were still among the fastest growing just 2 years later in 2015. Just 21.3%. That's why at Epicomm we track a company over many years and across many different business environments before we designate it an industry leader, because there is a huge difference between getting on the right side of this great divide and staying there. And as I mentioned, we spend a whole lot of time across a whole lot of years studying these right-siders, if you will. Companies that tend to live on the right side of the great divide, that get there and stay, not for a year, 2 years, until something in their environment changes, but they tend to stay there. We've spent a lot of time studying them, very, very carefully. And as I mentioned, we learned something over those years of study. We learned, number one, that every one of these leaders, these right-siders, has his or her own story. But we also learned that there were certain commonalities, that there were certain common approaches, certain common mindsets, certain common views. Again, we could spend a week talking just about these folks, but let me give you a flavor for what these companies know that gets them and keeps them on the right side of the great divide. Every single one of these companies, these right-siders, if you will, understands that the leadership required to get on and stay on the right side of the great divide has changed profoundly. Leadership in our industry used to be about continuously improving in things we've always done, continuously getting better at stuff we've always done. Now leadership is about identifying and evaluating new ways, and often radically new ways, to create value for our clients, and not just create value for our clients, but ensure that they recognize the value we create for them. We must always be looking at ways to increase revenue streams, control costs, never be satisfied with the status quo. We have to challenge how and what we are doing in all aspects on a daily basis. Not my words, ladies and gentlemen, the words of your peers who get on and stay on the right side of the Great Divide. And we have an equally substantial body of research on what we call fallen leaders. Companies that were on the right side and thought, I got this all figured out, and they found out very quickly how wrong they were and how right General McChrystal was. Anyway, what the right-siders know. Leadership required to get on and stay on the right side has changed profoundly. What else do they know? They know that we have to choose our path carefully. I showed you earlier a slide with a partial list of the services that are now considered part of our industry, that participants in Epicomm's State of the Industry research offer. Well, which of them are we supposed to be doing? I mean, what are we supposed to be? Should we be offering one-to-one cross-media marketing, database management and analytics, content creation, video for the web, 3D printing, all of them, none of them? Which ones are we supposed to be doing? What these right-siders know, ladies and gentlemen, is that our decision has to be based on rigorous strategic planning that defines what's best, again, given my company's resources, circumstances, and goals. Not on what seems to be hot, not on what looks like the next big thing, and not on what seems to be working for someone else. The right-siders know that we have to attract, but also retain and grow share. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we must never allow, and I see this happen every day in our research, ladies and gentlemen, we must never allow a focus and enthusiasm for attracting new clients through more efficient marketing to distract us from retaining and growing our share of current clients through superior customer service and value creation. Again, no one would intentionally ever let that happen, but if we are not vigilant, it does. I see it every day in our State of the Industry research. Companies bringing in new clients and losing current clients. Often some of their most profitable and essential clients. Not intentionally, because they didn't understand that. They lost sight of that. And we're going to talk more about how we avoid doing that shortly. Right-siders know that we have to maximize adaptability. I and Epicomm have emphasized for years, ladies and gentlemen, that our industry is not changing. It is being redefined. It is being transformed. Everything from our clients and their expectations to our services and competition and critical skills are being redefined. It is Darwinism in the extreme. And we either prepare ourselves to adjust quickly and efficiently to this profound change, or we get left behind. There is no third way. Maximize adaptability. And finally, well, there's a lot more, but again, I want to give you a flavor for what makes these right-siders, these leaders, who they are. We have to build a new labor force for our new industry, and these folks will talk to you over and over, and I understand this is what Mr. Wynn talked about on Tuesday, over and over about the importance of building an appropriate labor force. And what they'll talk about is how we need new skills, social media marketing, consultative selling, team selling, database creation, management, and analytics, strategic planning, and IT. Now, what's different about that? What's different about that is people who have those skills can work anywhere. So we are not simply competing industry-wide, we are competing economy-wide for those skills. They'll talk about how we have to hire experts, because many of the services on that slide I showed you earlier, that new revenue for a new industry slide, those things are far removed from our core print and mail businesses. So we have to hire experts, because many of those services are not simply extensions of our core print and mail businesses. They are new businesses that require expertise. They'll talk about how we have to promote ourselves as an employer of choice, or a place where the best want to work, how we have to integrate in a personnel who are increasingly diverse in skills and interests and work habits and career expectations, Generation Xers, millennials, into an efficient, effective, cohesive labor force. And they will talk to you, these right-siders will, at length, about the importance of, as callous as it may sound, and as difficult as it may be, of getting rid of people who simply are not going to get us where we need to go. Because to a man and to a woman, they talk passionately about how we simply can't afford to carry them all anymore. So that's the state of the industry in less than half an hour. That's it. Now, there's nothing more I want to say about it. I want to talk about what we do about it. So for another half hour, I want to talk about those must-dos I mentioned. Again, not best practices that we get to when we have the time. Must-dos. Actions we must take right now. I don't care who we are. I don't care what segment we're in. I don't care how well we've been doing. I don't care how well established we are. Actions we must take to get on and stay on the right side of the Great Divide in our increasingly competitive and complex. And that's, if I had to use two words, Roberta, if I had to use three words to describe our industry, you know what those three words would be? And believe me, I wish I could say three words and sit down. Those three words would be competitive, more complex, and historic opportunity. So I want to talk about what we need to do to capture that opportunity. Must do number one, maximize client retention. Increased customer loyalty is the single most important driver of long-term financial performance. Increasing customer retention by even 5% increases profitability by 25% to 95%. Thomas O. Jones, W. Earl Sasser, Why Satisfied Customers Defect, Harvard Business Review. Download it at that site, spend an hour with this article. You will not be sorry. Good news. We've just conducted a client satisfaction survey. And 27% of our clients rated us completely satisfied, 5 out of 5. And another 54% rated us 4 out of 5 for satisfied. That means 81% of our clients are satisfied or better with us. We have to feel good about that. Well, not according to Jones and Sasser, where you and I would be reassured that 81% of our clients rated us a 4 or better. Jones and Sasser would be concerned, alarmed, because only 27% rated us completely satisfied. What they do in that article, ladies and gentlemen, is argue very compellingly about the immense difference in loyalty between a customer who is completely satisfied and a customer who is just satisfied. And what they go on to show is that it means a whole lot of very important things. It means that we can never assume that our relationship with a client is strong if it is anything less than a 5, if they are anything less than completely satisfied. They go on to show that it means it is worthwhile to move our most profitable clients from a 4 to a 5. And they show compellingly that it is almost always more worthwhile to spend time moving clients from a 4 to a 5 than spending time with the 3s and 2s. They show that even if our customer satisfaction scores compare favorably to the competition's, they are not good enough unless our best clients are totally satisfied. And Jones and Sasser go on to talk about how if they're not totally satisfied, if they're not a 5, they are, in their words, up for grabs. And then they go on to talk about how completely satisfying customers does not mean we never make a mistake or disappoint them. We will. And what they argue is that when we do, what matters most is that we have an effective procedure for making it right. And they argue at length that when we make a mistake with a client, we have an immense opportunity, if we make it right, efficiently and quickly, to move that 4 to a 5 or to keep that 5 a 5. Why is that so important? Because as they show, increasing customer retention by even 5% increases profitability by between 25 and 95%. Where are you going to find an ROI like that? All right, why satisfied customers defect? Jones and Sasser, www.hbr.org. Spend an hour with it. Customer engagement score, because actions speak louder than words. Who calculates a customer engagement score for their most essential, can't afford to lose clients? Now, what is a customer engagement score? Think of a customer engagement score as a leading indicator of the health of our relationship with key clients. And what is more important to our business than the health of our relationship with key clients? Think of a leading indicator score as a heads up as to the direction and trend of that relationship. And you know, the point of this, ladies and gentlemen, is that of course we talk to our key clients all the time. Of course we visit them regularly. But the point of the customer engagement score is that can we really know how they feel about us based on what they tell us alone? The point of the customer engagement score is that retaining those critical clients is so important that rather than relying on what they tell us alone, we've got to track carefully what they are doing because actions speak louder than words. We should create customer engagement scores for every one of our too important to lose clients. And we should calculate those scores at least semi-annually, and we should track them as carefully as we track any of our key financial and operational ratios. Because, and I'll say it for a third time, I used to be a teacher. I'm used to repeating myself. Even a 5% increase in customer retention increases profitability by 25 to 95%. What goes into a customer engagement score? Stuff like that. Trends in the customer's purchases, trends in upsales, number of contacts, kind of logical stuff. You could make it whatever you want. But you see, this gets at what they do as opposed to just what they're telling us. Want to know more? How to build an early warning system, i.e. a customer engagement score, www.tango.com. 10 minutes. What are we doing that annoys you? If I asked you if you conduct customer satisfaction surveys, I'd imagine every hand in the room would go up. But how many of us ask our clients, what are we doing that annoys you? Now that may seem like an odd question to ask, but again, in our must-do of maximizing client retention, it's essential. According to Adrian Swins Co., the customer service strategy with the best ROI, www.forbes.com. You can download every one of these articles for free. Here's what Swiss Cone writes. While a customer service or experience strategy based on delight or wow may feel like a more positive and better approach to customer service, it turns out that a strategy of minimizing disappointments could offer a better return on our investment of time and money and resources. And what Swiss Co. is talking about is all these little hiccups that make the difference between a completely satisfied customer and a satisfied customer. All these little mistakes, all these little oversights, and what he talks about, and what Jones and Sasser talk about as well, ladies and gentlemen. These articles are perfect complements. What they talk about is that these hiccups, these little mistakes, these little oversights, these little disappointments, they're not going to cause your client to jump on the internet and start trashing you. In fact, it's very likely your client isn't even going to say anything about them. But what Swiss Co. and Jones and Sasser argue is that these things are just bad enough that the client will remember them, affecting your loyalty, and we know what loyalty does to profitability, your retention and advocacy. And what he advocates, Swiss Co. that is again, what could be a simpler solution? We ask, is there anything that we do, however slight, that annoys you or has annoyed you in the past? And he knows this is kind of contrary to the conventional wisdom, because he talks about how this is not what you're used to hearing. What are you used to hearing? You're used to hearing, don't sweat the small stuff. Focus on the big stuff. And he counters that. He says, focusing only on big things means that we often miss the many little things that in themselves can have a significant but not obvious impact on our business. That thing that makes that client a 4 rather than a 5. And that thing that, again, is not going to send them running on the internet, but that they remember and is going to decrease your likelihood of retaining them. These little things, if not addressed, can add up and together pose serious problems for our businesses and the customer experiences we are delivering. The customer service strategy with the best ROI, Adrian Swiss Co., www.forbes.com. Here's a simple one, and I put this one up here because over and over I hear from your peers, Andy, we've diversified, we've added all these services, we've hired the experts, we've done everything to make this work, and our clients still aren't using them. And I came across this in an article by Donna Fenn, 10 ways to get more sales from existing customers, www.inc.com. And in there, Donna Fenn quotes an entrepreneur from our industry, a young lady who runs a printing company, who was faced with this challenge. I added all these services and my clients aren't using them. So you know what she does? How simple is this? Every year, she sends each client a personalized letter with a list of all the services she offers and a check mark next to the services they used that year. And then, of course, there's effective follow-up and a number of other things, but those 4s are supposed to be check marks. But what she found is that the return to this simple, effective, really minimal cost activity was extraordinary. How much more can we do for your checklist? 10 ways to get more sales from existing customers. That article will take 5 minutes. This is something I include in every presentation. There is absolutely nothing I can tell you that is more important than this, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't think anything separates the leaders from the rest of the industry more than this specific action. I call it understand, solve, document. Sometimes I call it customer satisfaction, customer retention, taking the ultimate step. I recently asked your peers, like 2 months ago, what are you doing to improve client retention and capture a bigger share of the client? It's a simple question. What are you doing? No one said nothing. I mean, they wouldn't be in business if they said nothing. Oh, they talked about increasing contact with clients. Our owner is getting out more. We're meeting owner to owner. We're selling higher in the organization. Account reviews, team and consultative selling. They talked about we're listening carefully to clients' goals and then working as a team with them, marshaling all of our expertise to help them reach their goals. We've become a solutions provider. We're diversifying. We're adding the services they need. They talked about we're offering exceptional service, quality, reliability. We're making capital investments so we can produce their work more efficiently and more quickly. We're marketing to our clients, not just the prospects. We used to market only to prospects. Now we're marketing to our clients so they understand everything we can be doing for them, so we can grow share of wallet, so we can increase retention. I heard about how we are acting as educators. We're educating clients in industry trends. We're establishing ourselves as experts. I heard about ISO certification, Six Sigma certification, gifts, rebates, volume discounts, and I can go on. Do you know what I did not hear about? I did not hear when I asked, what are you doing to increase customer retention and grow share of wallet? You know the one thing I did not hear? We are documenting our contributions to the client's success. We are showing the client exactly how he or she benefits from partnering with us. The more precisely we can answer questions such as the following, the better. How much money have we saved the client? How much time have we saved the client? How much have we increased the response rate to their membership campaign? How many qualified leads did we generate for the client? How much did we increase traffic to their website? What exactly did we do for that client? Our goal is to leave no doubt about how we've contributed to their success and never ever assume that they just get it. I have many examples of this in our reports, ladies and gentlemen. I will share one with you. One of your peers recently, as we discussed this very issue of understand, solve, but document, told me of this story, and I'll quote it directly. A new customer was recommended to us for fundraising. Last year, she spent $7,800 on printing and raised $8,400. We showed her many ways to improve her return. This year, she spent $6,200 and raised $72,000. This owner is not shy about reminding this client that he increased her return nearly tenfold. So you see what he did. He understood her problem. Yeah. He solved her problem. Great. But he documented his contribution to her success. There's nothing more important to retaining and growing share of wallet. And as we've talked about, there is nothing more important to maximizing profitability. Here's the next must-do, and I include this in every State of the Industry presentation because it's that important. This is a quote from Peter Drucker when Peter Drucker was asked, "Professor Drucker, what is it that business executives never seem to learn?" Drucker's response was, "They never seem to learn that in business, one does not begin with answers. One begins by asking, what are our questions?" Among the must-do questions we should be asking, what are we going to do better in 2016 than we did in 2015? Because in our increasingly competitive, complex new industry, we are either getting better or we're falling behind. What are we going to do better this year than we did last year? How are we getting more valuable to our most important clients? What are we doing that will maximize our retention of them? What is our biggest internal barrier to profitable growth? What internally is holding us back? I recently asked your peers this question, and I told them, I don't want to hear about the economy. I don't want to hear about the price cutter down the road. I want you to think very carefully about your organization, and I want you to tell me what internally is holding you back. And then another question we should ask, and this may seem like an odd one, what trends, developments, issues are we hearing about but not experiencing yet? Which are most likely to affect us in the coming year? How prepared are we to capitalize on the positive and protect ourselves from the negative? Why do I emphasize that question, ladies and gentlemen? Because remember, I said there are two assumptions that no one in our industry should ever make under any circumstances. Assumption number one was never, ever, for any reason, assume we've got it all covered. The second assumption we should never make under any circumstances is assuming that because something isn't affecting me today, it isn't going to affect me tomorrow. And asking that simple question will prevent us from doing that. Our next must-do, and we'll wrap up in a few minutes, our next must-do, we talked about how the folks who get on the right side of that great divide know that they must maximize adaptability. They must be prepared to adjust quickly and efficiently to rapid, disruptive, unpredictable change. So our next must-do is create an adaptability advantage. And there is a quote you're all familiar with from Charles Darwin. And as we all know, everything about our industry, from our clients and their expectations to our competition and services and critical skills, is being redefined. Now, my point is we could think of what's happening in our industry, ladies and gentlemen, in the Darwinian sense of adapt or perish. But at Epicomm, we prefer to think of it as adapt and thrive because, as I mentioned earlier, of the historic opportunity we have to get involved in our clients' work earlier, stay involved longer, and satisfy a broader range of their communications needs. To capture that opportunity, we have to create or cultivate an adaptability advantage, or the ability to adjust quickly and efficiently to not moderate and gradual change, because change is not moderate and gradual anymore, but to rapid, disruptive, unpredictable change. And you can read all about this in the State of the Industry report. It is a process, obviously, not an event. And it has 6 basic steps, which I outline in the report. And the reality is we have to get better at all 6 steps because neither the magnitude nor the pace of change is about to diminish. Several of your peers correctly describe creating this adaptability advantage, maximizing adaptability, as a workforce issue. A workforce issue that requires slowly turning team members' behavior one person at a time, and a slow process of getting everyone on board. Your peers who kind of get it emphasize how it is challenging, frustrating, and time-consuming, but it is not optional. We are forcing change and innovative thinking. We are getting everyone on board, living it, pounding it, accepting nothing less. And we are replacing employees who simply will not get with the program. Again, ladies and gentlemen, not my words, but the words of your peers. You can read about this in the State of the Industry report. We outlined the 6 steps of the adaptability process, talk about them in depth. Let me just give you a flavor for them. Step number 1, we got to figure out what's changing. And as usual, one of your peers put it best. We must draw on all favorable business intelligence that can be gained from the marketplace to the shop floor. Of course, that means staying in close contact with our clients, conducting top 20 voice of the client interviews, because no voice is more important to us than the voice of our key clients. It means talking to our sales reps and CSRs who are closest to the client, but not just our sales reps and CSRs, all our employees, drawing on the expertise of all our employees, our peer groups, our social media networks, our industry association, our trade press, drawing on all favorable business intelligence. And we also have to go beyond our standard sources of business intelligence. Richard Burt is a professor at the University of Chicago who is an expert in building professional networks. And if Professor Burt were on this stage rather than me, he'd ask you 2 questions. He'd ask you, number 1, how many of you belong to a peer group? And I imagine most of you would raise your hands. But his second question, I'm not so sure we'd have quite as many affirmative responses. His second question would be, but how many members of your peer group, how many members of your network are from outside your industry or your profession or your department? And his point, which he makes very compellingly, is that networks are most effective when they include people who think differently from you. So he would ask, how many in our network are from outside our profession, industry, or market? And he would also ask, how many have we excluded because although they're knowledgeable and successful and creative and established, they just don't know our business. And he would argue very compellingly that how we answer those questions says a whole lot about our adaptability. Now, his work is a little dense, but you can find a nice summary of it at Where to Get a Good Idea. Steal it from outside your group, www.newyorktimes.com. Step 2 is sharing what we learn with our employees. And I'll quote General McChrystal again. In Team of Teams, General McChrystal argues very effectively that we have to normalize the sharing of information across our companies. We have to make it a standard practice, a priority. It does us no good if our employees don't understand what's changing, why it's changing, and what it means to us. Step 3 is figuring out what change means to us. We have to push industry data deep into the organization to capture everyone's best thinking and keep development initiatives alive no matter how busy we are. Step 4, create a strategic plan. Step 5 is the big one, execution. And I can't tell you how many of your peers get through steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 and stumble on step 5, that critical step, that critical advance from effective planning to effective execution, effective action. And step 6 is measuring how well we're adapting. And again, you can see all of these steps in detail in the State of the Industry report. One more thing on this subject, and this comes from another book I highly recommend. Has anyone read The High Speed Company? Creating Urgency and Growth in a Nanosecond Culture by Jason Jennings. You know, and with the exception of General McChrystal's book, I advise reading every word of General McChrystal's book twice. That's how profound it is. These other books I'm recommending, read a chapter. They're not like an economics text where you have to read chapter 1, 2, and 3 to figure out what's going on in chapter 4. Get these things. Read one chapter. You'll learn something from them. This was, I thought, it was a very valuable book because everything in it was actionable. And one of the things Jennings talks about is getting rid of cave people. And who are cave people? Cave people are citizens against virtually everything. They are the folks who are cynical. Management is up to something. They're the folks who go around and talk about, well, listen, this is just go along. It's just management's latest fad. It'll blow over. No need to get excited. No need to get behind it. Cave people are the ones who, yesterday was always better. The way we always did it is always best. And what Jennings and many of your peers who are on the right side of the Great Divide argue compellingly is they can't be around anymore. We cannot do what we need to do if we are burdened with cave people. Again, take a look at it. The High-Speed Company, Creating Urgency and Growth in a Nanosecond Culture. One more, because this is where even the leaders we study struggle. Execution. It's one thing to know we have to do something. It's something entirely different to actually do it. And one more book I'm going to recommend. Again, I know you don't have time to read this stuff. I just want you to be aware of these books. One more book. Actually, there's two more. This one and another one. Anyone read Simple Rules? How to Thrive in a Complex... You notice almost every one of these books I recommended has the word complexity in the title? I mean, the world is getting more complicated. Anyone read Simple Rules yet? Pick it up, a chapter. Read one chapter. Anyway, in there, you'll read this. Where does strategy live in a company? See if you agree. Too often, a company's strategy sits on a shelf, gathering dust. A strategy that doesn't influence critical decisions on a day-to-day basis is not a strategy, it is a book report. And the authors go on to develop that theme. And as I said, this is something even the folks on the right side of the Great Divide struggle with, execution. In fact, when I asked your peers what would most improve their company's adaptability, because we have to maximize adaptability, executing our decisions, doing what we decided we have to do, was by far the most frequently cited obstacle. So I'm going to leave you with two actions that can help us execute more effectively. And this is the last book I'm going to recommend. Has anyone read The Attacker's Advantage? Turning Uncertainty into Breakthrough Opportunities by Ram Charan. Notice the themes: uncertainty, making uncertainty an opportunity, not a threat, maximizing flexibility and adaptability, making complexity an opportunity, not a threat. That's the theme. That's the theme of my presentation. That's the theme of the must-dos. That's the theme of every source that I think it's worth investigating further. Well, anyway, in that book, Ram Charan writes, he talks about something called the 8-quarter rolling budget. And he writes that budgets can be the strongest tool for steering onto a new path and making adjustments along the way, or a stubborn core rigidity and therefore a huge constraint on steering and execution? And he talks about this 8-quarter rolling budget. And the way it works, ladies and gentlemen, is we project revenues and costs out quarter by quarter for 8 quarters. Okay, that's kind of what the name suggests. Well, you know, what are you, out of your mind? There's so much uncertainty, so much complexity, so much change. I can't figure out what's going on next quarter, never mind 8 quarters from now. And he recognizes that, and he says, understood, but we cannot use uncertainty as an excuse. He says, we've got to craft our intelligence, the stuff we gathered in step 1 of the adaptability process, and sketch out the next 8 quarters. It's not going to be perfect. And then each quarter, we review the budget, we make revisions where necessary, and then we project out 1 more quarter. So we're always looking 2 quarters ahead, but with the best information we have on internal and external conditions as of this quarter, not of the quarter when the budget was created. So it's actually a very, very interesting concept of maintaining this budget so that it is constantly reflecting 8 quarters out everything we know as of this minute. 8-quarter rolling budget. The outside world must be part of the budgeting and review process, and numbers must be allowed to change when circumstances change. The tighter the linkage between the numbers and internal and external realities the company is facing, the better you'll be able to steer. Again, the attacker's advantage, Ram Shriram. He's got another one in there called the short-term milestones. He describes these things as the front end of our strategic plan. They are the mission-critical markers that we must hit. They are not financial milestones. They are not production milestones. They are checks on our progress toward mission-critical activities. And I'll give you an example. We've decided we're going to diversify. We're going to move into services that, quite frankly, are very different from our core print and mail services, that in every sense are new businesses. And what Ram Shriram would suggest in this idea of setting short-term milestones is that these are the kinds of questions we're going to need to ask to see if, in fact, we are diversifying efficiently. Have we hired the experts we're going to need? If we have, how are they doing? Are they doing what we need them to do? What about employee commitment? Do employees understand the importance of the services we are adding? What about client education? Have we begun to introduce the clients to our new capabilities? Are we showing them how they will benefit from these capabilities? You see the difference? What he's talking about is not a financial or operational milestone. It is these essential steps. If any of them don't happen, our plan, no matter how well conceived, will fail. We must be specific. You cannot just paint a picture of where you want your organization to go and leave it at that. You must translate your idea from 50,000 feet to 50 feet to make it actionable. Setting short-term milestones, the 8-quarter rolling budget, all ways to take that essential step from effective planning to effective execution. Ram Shriram, the attacker's advantage. I told you I was going to quote a whole bunch of people from outside the industry. And again, not one of these folks mentions our industry anywhere in their article or book. But every word is relevant to us. So where does this leave us? What are we going to do? We had to cover a whole lot of stuff in a whole short period of time because, as I said at the beginning, so much is happening in this industry, it's hard to know exactly what to talk about. Well, here's what I'd like our takeaways to be. How about we do this? We pick one step of the 6-step adaptability process. And this is a good time to do this. It's early in the year. Let's make this a New Year's resolution. We pick one step in the 6-step adaptability process, and we're going to focus in 2006 on getting better at that one step. How about if we pick one major client, one of our too important to lose clients, and we calculate and track that client's customer engagement score? How about if we pick one of our most important, too important to lose clients, and we document our contributions to that client's success? How much time we've saved them, how much money we've saved them, how exactly they've benefited from partnering with us. How about we ask those questions Drucker recommends, or I should say I recommend in the spirit of Drucker. What will we do better this year than we did last year? What, candidly, is our biggest internal barrier to profitable growth? And then finally, why don't you read one of the sources I listed? Some of them are going to take 5 minutes. Some of them may take a couple of hours. The books, there's a bunch of them. I would never, ever ask you to read something I haven't read thoroughly and that I thought was worthy of your time. Pick one of the books, read a chapter. If you would like a copy of these slides, please give me your business card or contact me at my email address. Thank you again to EFI for including me in Connect 2016. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time and attention. It was an honor.